The studio floor glistened with artificial rainwater the night tragedy struck, March 31st, 1993, a date that would carve itself into the darkest corners of Hollywood history. Brandon Lee stepped into the abandoned warehouse set of The Crow, preparing for a scene that demanded intensity, pain, and the illusion of resurrection. Crew members moved with quiet precision. Lights burned through the smoky haze, and cameras hovered like silent witnesses to an unfolding secret. In the scene, Brandon was supposed to fall to the floor after a prop gun fired in his direction. The stunt had been rehearsed. The weapon had supposedly been checked. The moment was meant to be safe. Yet in the blink of an eye, something went catastrophically wrong. When the trigger was pulled, Brandon collapsed. And this time, it was not a performance. Confusion spread through the room, then terror. A shout rang out, but he did not respond. As he lay motionless, the studio atmosphere shifted from cinematic tension to real horror. This was not an accidental stumble or a mistimed movement. Brandon Lee had been shot with a projectile that should never have existed inside a film prop. The camera kept rolling for several seconds before anyone realized that history had just been rewritten most violently. In the heart of a film designed to celebrate a fallen anti-hero, Hollywood had created a tragedy that would haunt the industry forever. Welcome to Starlet Mystery. To understand the weight of that moment, one must return to a far quieter time before the smoke-filled studios and before Brandon became one of the most enigmatic rising stars of the early 90s. He was born on February 1st, 1965, in Oakland, California, carrying a legacy so immense that the world projected expectations onto him before he could speak his first word. His father, Bruce Lee, was already transforming martial arts and cinema into something new and electrifying. His mother, Linda Lee Cadwell, knew that her son's life would never be ordinary. Brandon grew up between cultures and continents. His earliest years were spent moving from California to Hong Kong and back again as his father's fame exploded. The spotlight was not yet on him, but the echoes of expectation were forming around his small footsteps. The world around him shifted permanently on July 20th, 1973, the day Bruce Lee died unexpectedly at only 32. Brandon was 8 years old when shockwaves spread across the globe. Fans mourned. The industry speculated. His family was shattered. The loss of a father so globally adored created an emotional storm that shaped Brandon's inner world forever. Some reports suggest that during these years, Brandon struggled to define who he was. Without the comparison to a legend, he barely had time to know. Others say he carried an unspoken fear that fame came with a curse. Whether true or not, the psychological weight of growing up in the shadow of an icon became a permanent thread in the tapestry of his identity. Through his teenage years, he lived between introspection and rebellion. He attended various schools, but struggled with structure. By 1983, after several disciplinary incidents, Brandon finally earned his diploma from Merrill Estee High School. Friends from this period later described him as charismatic, intense, and unusually thoughtful. He was often searching for something deeper than the world around him could offer. Acting found him slowly rather than suddenly. In 1985, he enrolled at Emerson College in Boston to study theater, but he soon felt suffocated by academic walls. He left to join the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute in New York, hoping to find emotional truth in performance. This choice marked the first time Brandon claimed control over his own destiny instead of walking the path others expected from Bruce Lee's son. During these early years, he faced the brutal reality of Hollywood's bias. Casting agents looked at him and saw a martial artist first, an actor second. Some even suggested he should simply copy his father's roles. Brandon refused. He wanted depth, complexity, vulnerability, and characters that lived beyond fists and kicks. Yet opportunities were scarce. In 198.6, he landed his first significant job in the television film Kung Fu, the movie, where he appeared alongside David Carradine. The role was both a breakthrough and a reminder that Hollywood wanted him to inherit his father's mantle, whether he liked it or not. As the late 80s progressed, Brandon moved through small roles, training relentlessly and building a body of work that hinted at his potential. By 1989, he secured a co-starring part in Laser Mission, a low-budget action film that received little critical praise but demonstrated Brandon's star presence. He performed many of his own stunts, yet audiences noticed something else. Behind the action was a performer with an expressive face and emotional depth, someone capable of carrying tragedy and humor in the same breath. His private life during this period was calmer than the rumors surrounding him. In 1990, while filming Rapid Fire, he met Eliza Hutton, who later became his fiancée. Their relationship grounded him. Friends noted that Eliza brought out Brandon's most sincere qualities and offered him stability in an industry famous for devouring rising stars. That same year, Rapid Fire premiered, and although it was marketed primarily for its action sequences, critics praised Brandon's charisma. For the first time, he stepped out of his father's shadow, and audiences recognized his individuality. Then came the opportunity that would define his career and his fate. In 1992, Brandon was cast as Eric Draven in The Crow, a dark graphic novel adaptation filled with themes of resurrection, love lost, and the haunting interplay between life and death. The role demanded emotional rawness rather than martial arts bravado. Brandon embraced it fully. He immersed himself in the character's grief and pain. Those on set later recalled how deeply he connected to the story of a man returning from the dead to avenge the person he loved most. Some reports suggest Brandon saw the role as symbolic of his own struggle to rise above the ghosts that followed him. Production began in February 1993, and despite its atmospheric beauty, the set was plagued by accidents. A carpenter suffered burns. A crew member was electrocuted but survived. The equipment malfunctioned. Rumors of a cursed production circulated quietly among workers, though no one dared speak them aloud. Brandon remained committed. He wanted this film to be his breakthrough into serious dramatic territory. It was his chance to redefine his artistry. That chance ended abruptly on that devastating night of March 31st, 1993, when the prop gun discharged a real projectile and shattered everything he had fought to build. The moments after March 31st, 1993, were chaos rendered in slow motion. Emergency lights flashed and paramedics rushed across the set with a practiced urgency that contrasted the surreal stillness of Brandon's body. Crew members, many of whom had spent weeks building a dreamscape of shadows, rain, and urban decay, were confronted with a reality too sharp, too cruel to process immediately. He was flown to the California Hospital Medical Center in Los Angeles. Doctors fought valiantly, but by April 1st, 1993, Brandon Lee was pronounced dead at 28 years old. The news shattered not only the people who loved him, but also an industry grappling with the consequences of carelessness, misfortune, and perhaps fate. Brandon's death sent shockwaves far beyond Hollywood. Fans of Bruce Lee mourned the son. while a younger generation, who had begun to follow Brandon's work in rapid fire and laser mission, confronted the incomprehensible loss of a rising talent. Investigations revealed that a chain of oversights had led to the fatal shot. Prop guns had not been properly checked. Safety protocols were incomplete. Some reports suggested that a fragment lodged in the barrel from previous filming went unnoticed, transforming an innocent scene into a permanent catastrophe. Conspiracy theories proliferated, some darkly suggesting deliberate sabotage, yet official accounts confirmed it as a tragic accident. For Hollywood, the incident became a haunting reminder of the thin line between performance and peril. Brandon's death was more than a headline. It crystallized the intense pressures he had carried throughout his life. From the weight of his father's legacy to the daily grind of proving himself as an actor, Brandon's trajectory had always been a delicate balancing act. He had grown up in a world where talent alone could not shield him from scrutiny. Every role, every stunt, every performance was layered with expectation. Some friends observed that he had embraced a quiet intensity, often retreating into himself to process both grief and ambition. He was haunted by the desire to prove that he was not merely Bruce Lee's son, that he was a singular presence, capable of evoking emotions beyond spectacle. Looking back, Brandon's early childhood had already foreshadowed this mixture of brilliance and fragility. His father's philosophy, combined with his mother's nurturing but cautious approach, created a complex emotional ecosystem. He was exposed early to martial arts discipline, but also to cinematic imagination. His parents encouraged creativity, yet tragedy struck too soon. The absence of Bruce Lee left him with both a void and an inheritance, a path that demanded he carve his identity from shadows and expectations. As Brandon navigated adolescence, he experimented with multiple identities. He trained in martial arts, honed his acting skills, and explored his personal relationships with sincerity and depth. Despite a bright exterior and a smile that could charm a room, he wrestled with insecurities. Some reports suggest that the weight of public expectation sometimes made him question his worth. He experienced moments of doubt and frustration, yet his resilience allowed him to turn these internal struggles into artistic energy. Every role became a statement of self-possession, a way to assert that he was more than a reflection of a legend. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, as Brandon built his portfolio, Hollywood often viewed him through the lens of novelty, the son of Bruce Lee stepping into martial arts cinema. But Brandon's ambitions extended far beyond the familiar action tropes. Rapid Fire in 1992 showcased his ability to blend physicality with charisma. Critics and fans noticed the subtlety in his expressions, the careful modulation of emotion beneath the surface. Here was a performer who could convey pain, humor, tension, and vulnerability in a single glance. Yet, he remained acutely aware of the fragile boundary between recognition and exploitation in Hollywood. Behind the camera, Brandon's personal life was filled with quiet devotion and tentative hope. His engagement to Eliza Hutton offered stability amidst the pressures of filming and public scrutiny. Friends recalled their warmth together, their laughter mingling with shared dreams of a future unbound by fame or tragedy. Yet even in this intimacy, Brandon remained conscious of mortality and the precariousness of life. He was a young man living with shadows, aware that life's fragility could upend everything in a heartbeat. The production of The Crow in early 1993 carried its own atmosphere of foreboding. The project was ambitious, filled with dark, Gothic imagery, and a narrative steeped in revenge and resurrection. Every detail was meticulously crafted, from the rain-slicked streets to the stark lighting that cast the actors' faces into chiaroscuro. Brandon immersed himself completely, living in the character's grief to better understand the story's emotional resonance. Some crew members later remarked that Brandon's dedication transcended acting. He was almost a medium through which the film's haunting soul was expressed. He understood the delicate interplay between life and art, between presence and absence, between performance and fate. After his death, the legacy of The Crow transformed from a film project into a memorial. The movie was completed using early digital technology and body doubles, creating a poignant reminder of what could have been. Upon its release in May 1994, audiences and critics were struck not only by the story of Eric Draven, but by the tragic reality behind the performance. The dark tones of the film, the brooding urban landscapes, and the emotional intensity became inseparable from Brandon Lee's untimely demise. His presence on screen seemed to reach beyond acting, becoming almost spectral, a meditation on mortality, artistry, and loss. Brandon's impact on Hollywood and pop culture cannot be measured merely by box office numbers or awards. He represented a bridge between generations. Fans of Bruce Lee saw echoes of martial genius, while a younger audience discovered an actor capable of subtlety and complexity. He was one of the first Asian American actors to approach mainstream stardom, not as a martial artist, but as a nuanced performer with a compelling inner life. His death sparked conversations about on-set safety protocols and the pressures actors face under intense scrutiny. It also cemented the tragic mystique that often surrounds youthful talent, lost too soon. The emotional reverberations were felt deeply by those who knew him personally. Eliza Hutton later described the overwhelming sense of absence, the echo of laughter that would never return, the loss of a presence that had become central to her life. Crew members remembered Brandon as serious but playful, meticulous but relaxed in ways that drew people toward him. Fans mourned not only his artistry, but the unrealized potential, the possibilities that would never manifest. Some reports suggest that this sense of unfulfilled promise added a haunting layer to The Crow's dark narrative, making Brandon's performance feel more alive, more urgent, and yet impossibly ephemeral. Before the tragic night of March 31st, 1993, Brandon Lee had already become a quietly fascinating figure in Hollywood, a man balancing the weight of a legendary legacy with his own ambitions and insecurities. He was 28, standing at the cusp of stardom, yet fully aware that every step forward carried the gaze of the world. The son of Bruce Lee, Brandon, could never escape the shadows cast by his father's iconography. Some reports suggest he felt both inspired and burdened by this inheritance, as though the very DNA that fueled his creativity was also a constant reminder of what he might lose if he faltered. Even as he carved his own identity, Brandon remained acutely aware of mortality and impermanence. In the early 1990s, whispers of danger surrounded the Crow's production. Props malfunctioned, lighting rigs collapsed, and the Gothic sets seemed to attract accidents with an almost supernatural regularity. Cast and crew began to speak in quiet tones about the curse of the project, though Brandon himself reportedly met such remarks with humor tinged by unease. Some say he had a premonition that life was fragile and that fate had a way of intervening when least expected. Whether this was intuition, superstition, or the reflective nature of a sensitive man is unknown, but it contributed to an aura of poignancy around his presence on set. Brandon's rising fame in Hollywood was as complex as his personal life. Following Rapid Fire's release in 1992, he began receiving attention not just for his action skills, but for a charisma that could light up the screen in subtle, almost hypnotic ways. Directors appreciated his ability to convey layers of emotion without grandiose gestures. He was serious about his craft, often retreating for hours to rehearse scenes, study characters, and understand psychological motivations. Some colleagues recalled that he was intense but approachable, a rare combination that drew loyalty and admiration from peers. Yet beneath this dedication was the constant pressure to perform, to prove himself not as Bruce Lee's son, but as Brandon Lee, an actor in his own right. Despite this emerging prominence, Brandon's private life remained relatively shielded from the relentless glare of media scrutiny. His engagement to Eliza Hutton provided stability, yet the relationship was also a source of reflection on the costs of fame. He navigated the tension between intimacy and public persona with care, knowing that any misstep could be magnified and misinterpreted. Friends noted that he often wrestled with the desire to be both ordinary and extraordinary, a contradiction that informed both his performances and his inner life. Psychologically, Brandon was sensitive, perceptive, and deeply introspective. He carried the memory of his father's death like a quiet undercurrent, influencing how he perceived the world and himself. The 80s and early 90s saw him exploring identity, not only through acting, but through relationships, friendships, and personal reflection. Some reports suggest he occasionally battled with feelings of isolation and the pressure of living up to a mythic standard. Yet he used these struggles to enhance his craft. He was drawn to characters with depth, often dark or wounded, as if playing them allowed him to confront his own fears, grief, and desire for meaning. The preparation for The Crow was emblematic of this approach. Brandon immersed himself in Eric Draven's story, exploring the profound grief of loss and the catharsis of vengeance. He reportedly spent hours discussing the character's motivations, rehearsing scenes repeatedly, and connecting to the emotional core of the narrative. For Brandon, acting was never just performance. It was exploration, excavation, and sometimes therapy. The film demanded intensity, and he delivered with a commitment that left colleagues awed. He brought a layered humanity to Eric Draven, blending anger, tenderness, and melancholy with a presence that was magnetic and unforgettable. As filming progressed through February and March 1993, Brandon's work ethic became both legendary and burdensome. Long hours under hot lights, heavy costumes, and rain machines tested his physical and emotional endurance. Yet he persisted, driven by a desire to create something timeless. Those close to him observed that he was both meticulous and spontaneous, a combination that made his performances electric, but left him exposed to exhaustion and stress. Some reports suggest that he occasionally wrestled with insomnia, racing thoughts, and the quiet burden of perfectionism. This tension, both external and internal, became the invisible framework for his artistry. Even amid the dark, Gothic aesthetic of The Crow, moments of levity existed. Brandon's laughter, playful teasing, and gentle interactions with the crew provided brief relief from the intensity of production. Friends and colleagues described a man who was both fierce in his dedication and warm in personal interactions, a duality that added to his mystique. He was simultaneously the rising star poised to transcend martial arts cinema, and a young man grappling with existential questions about identity, fate, and the fleeting nature of life. Yet beneath all this was a shadow of inevitability. Brandon's commitment to authenticity, to performing his own stunts, and to embracing the physicality of his roles increased exposure to danger. Hollywood was unforgiving, and the interplay between ambition and risk was ever present. The series of small accidents on set, while dismissed at first as coincidences, created a quiet tension that few dared acknowledge aloud. It was as if the very world around him had begun to sense the fragility of a life that burned so brightly and too briefly. By the end of March 1993, The Crow was nearly complete. Brandon had transformed the character of Eric Draven into something deeply resonant, a fusion of grief, love, and vengeance that was both cinematic and profoundly human. Yet fate had already written its own scene. On March 31st, 1993, a prop gun, an object designed for illusion, became a tool of irreversible reality. Brandon Lee's life ended in a moment that seemed ripped from the scripts of tragedy he so often inhabited on screen, leaving a world to wonder what might have been and cementing his presence as a luminous, haunting figure in Hollywood's collective memory. The morning after March 31st, 1993, the world awoke to headlines that seemed almost unreal. Brandon Lee, the young man whose charisma and talent had begun to reshape Hollywood's understanding of martial artists and dramatic actors alike, was gone. Newspapers and television reports filled with stunned disbelief. Fans gathered outside his Los Angeles home, leaving flowers, letters, and silent prayers. Hollywood itself paused, caught between mourning a rising star and confronting the terrifying reality of a preventable tragedy. There were no staged scenes here, no cinematic illusions, only the irrevocable weight of death and the haunting question of how it could have happened. The funeral, held on April 3rd, 1993, was intimate, yet profoundly moving. Family, close friends, and a handful of industry figures attended, each grappling with shock, grief, and a sense of loss that could not be articulated. Linda Lee Cadwell, his mother, stood composed yet visibly shattered, a woman who had endured the early death of her husband and now faced the same incomprehensible void with her son. Eliza Hutton, Brandon's fiancée, remained stoically at her post, her grief private but palpable. The ceremony itself was a quiet homage to a life that had already become emblematic of unfulfilled promise and profound artistry. It was filled with whispers of admiration for his talent, his dedication, and the rare sensitivity that had distinguished him from others in an industry often obsessed with spectacle over substance. In the days and weeks following, investigations into the fatal accident on The Crow set dominated news cycles. Hollywood studios faced scrutiny, prop departments were examined for negligence, and protocols for safety were re-evaluated industry-wide. Official reports confirmed a series of oversights that had transformed a routine scene into a tragic final act. Some reports noted that fragments from previous prop checks had gone unnoticed. Others speculated about procedural lapses. While there were conspiracy theories, the reality remained stark. A young life was extinguished in the pursuit of cinematic illusion. leaving an indelible mark on industry consciousness. Brandon's legacy, however, refused to remain solely defined by tragedy. The Crow, released posthumously in May 1994, became a cult classic almost immediately. Audiences were captivated not only by the gothic aesthetic and revenge-driven narrative, but by the spectral presence of Brandon himself. His performance transcended the screen, blending vulnerability, rage, and melancholic charm into a single haunting figure. Critics remarked that the film's emotional power was inseparable from the knowledge of his death. The world could not separate art from the man who had embodied it, and this convergence elevated The Crow from a dark comic adaptation to a poignant meditation on loss, resurrection, and artistry interrupted too soon. Cultural discussions about Brandon Lee extended beyond the immediate cinematic community. Asian American actors, long underrepresented in Hollywood, saw in him a figure who had begun to challenge typecasting and expectations. He had approached roles with nuance, avoiding simplistic replication of his father's martial arts legend, while embracing the physicality, discipline, and presence that such heritage conferred. Some analysts argue that Brandon's brief career planted seeds for a future generation of actors seeking complex, multidimensional characters rather than stereotypical archetypes. His death, while devastating, also amplified the conversation about representation, talent, and the pressures placed on actors to navigate both legacy and expectation. Friends, colleagues, and co-stars frequently recalled Brandon's warmth, humor, and dedication. He was known for meticulous preparation, yet could also be spontaneous and playful, drawing others toward him with ease. Many noted a quiet intensity, an ability to connect deeply with people, while simultaneously maintaining the private sanctuary that allowed him to process grief, ambition, and existential reflection. These traits, coupled with his tragic end, created the aura of a star frozen in potential, a figure simultaneously vibrant and untouchable, mortal and immortalized through film. Brandon's death also gave rise to a new dimension of Hollywood mystique. Rumors of curses and supernatural premonitions circulated widely, fueled by accidents on set and the dramatic nature of his demise. While sensationalized, these stories reflected the collective anxiety and fascination with a life so closely intertwined with spectacle, danger, and artistic devotion. The idea of the young star, whose brilliance was snuffed out too soon, reinforced the cultural archetype of genius and tragedy, an archetype as old as Hollywood itself. In a way, Brandon Lee became both a cautionary tale and a figure of reverent inspiration, embodying the fragility and intensity of creative life. In the years following his death, tributes multiplied. Directors, actors, and fans created memorials, documentaries, and retrospectives, exploring his impact and potential. The Crow remains central to his cultural legacy, not only as a cinematic achievement, but as a touchstone for discussions about mortality, artistry, and the often unseen pressures that shape performers' lives. Some reports suggest that young actors who grew up admiring Brandon found in him a model for dedication tempered by humanity, someone who combined skill with sensitivity, intensity with empathy. The psychological and emotional legacy of Brandon Lee is equally profound. His life, though short, illustrates the intersection of ambition, legacy, identity, and fate. He carried the weight of a father's legend, the expectations of an industry, and the hopes of fans, while seeking personal and artistic authenticity. His death crystallized these tensions, leaving a narrative as layered as any film role he inhabited. In reflecting on Brandon Lee, one sees a man who pursued truth and intensity in every endeavor, who engaged fully with life, art, and love, and who paid the ultimate price in the most public and shocking way possible. Brandon Lee's story continues to resonate because it encompasses universal themes: the allure and danger of ambition, the inevitability of mortality, the pursuit of self-definition amidst inherited expectation, and the enduring power of art to immortalize the living and the departed alike. He is remembered not just for the tragedy that claimed him, but for the vivid humanity he brought to every performance, the dedication that defined his craft, and the emotional depth that elevated even fleeting appearances into lasting impressions. His legacy, though forged in part by loss, endures through film, memory, and the cultural conversations he helped shape. Brandon Lee's life, though tragically brief, left an imprint on Hollywood that reverberates decades after his death. In the years following March 31st, 1993, his story has been retold with fascination, sometimes sensationalized, but always marked by awe for the talent extinguished too soon. Scholars, critics, and fans alike have noted that Brandon represented a rare convergence of inherited legacy and individual artistry. He was, in a sense, a bridge between the mythic past of martial arts cinema and the emerging landscape of layered, emotionally resonant storytelling. His influence on representation in Hollywood cannot be understated. In an era when Asian American actors were often relegated to typecast roles, Brandon's nuanced performances demonstrated a pathway toward visibility that embraced depth and humanity. Some reports suggest that young actors cite his work on Rapid Fire and The Crow as formative, revealing a sensitivity and complexity rarely allowed for performers of Asian heritage at the time. His dedication to authenticity, his refusal to mimic his father's exact style, and his insistence on embracing emotion as fiercely as action left an indelible mark on those who came after him. Yet alongside admiration, controversy, and myth persist. The Curse of the Crow has been retold in countless articles, forums, and documentaries. Set accidents, tragic timing, and the fatal shooting all fuel the narrative of fate or cosmic justice, though official investigations confirmed procedural failures and oversights rather than malice. Some fans speculate that Brandon's untimely death was emblematic of a larger, almost cinematic pattern in Hollywood, where talent and potential are often intertwined with danger and sacrifice. The blend of real-world tragedy and mythologized narrative only heightened the enigmatic aura surrounding him. Psychologically, Brandon's life story offers a window into the complex interplay between legacy, ambition, and mortality. From the death of his father on July 20th, 1973, to the constant comparison and expectation that followed him through adolescence, Brandon developed a profound introspection. Friends and colleagues frequently remarked on his reflective nature, the quiet ways he absorbed the world's pressures and transformed them into artistry. Some reports suggest he wrestled with anxiety and the subtle weight of fame, yet he channeled these struggles into performances that felt lived in and emotionally true. Every gesture, every glance, every subtle inflection on screen carried the resonance of someone intimately acquainted with both grief and desire, loss and hope. The Crow remains the centerpiece of Brandon Lee's artistic legacy, Released posthumously in May 1994, the film is both a Gothic spectacle and a meditation on mortality. Audiences could not separate the man from the myth. Every frame, drenched in rain and shadow, seemed imbued with the presence of a spirit who had already left the physical world. Critics recognized this eerie duality, praising the film's ability to evoke pathos while delivering striking visual storytelling. Fans, meanwhile, experienced a different, more personal connection, a sense of witnessing the final performance of a life brimming with promise and talent. One truth remains undeniable. His brilliance, compassion, and artistry continue to captivate, inspire, and haunt, a legacy carved in shadows and light, forever entwined with the mystery and allure of Hollywood itself. Welcome to the enduring enigma of Brandon Lee.